Could it be that the most dangerous region in the world is trying to improve itself? Imagine that you're sitting quietly at a restaurant or cafeteria and suddenly you begin to hear gunshots just a few meters away. You'd choose an empty stomach and opt for a quick escape, wouldn't you? Now, unfortunately, these kind of situations are not uncommon in many Central American cities. Cities where security is noticeable for its absence. In 2018, 42 of the 50 most violent cities in the world were in Latin America, and of these, 2 were in Honduras, 1 in Guatemala, and 1 in El Salvador. In 2017 alone, more than 14,500 homicides were registered in Central America. The vast majority of them, more than 90% of them, happens in 3 countries known as the Northern Triangle: El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. Chilling, to say the least. So why is violence so common in this part of the world? What is driving these high crime rates? And has Central America always been a violent region? Well, let's find out. Here's a question for you. Have you ever noticed how curious the map of the American continent is? Just look at it for a second. Central America is a bridge between South America and North America. And this has consequences. The fact that Central America is a bridge has turned it into the largest illicit goods highway in the world for goods produced in South America. We're talking mostly about cocaine. No less than 90% of all the cocaine that enters the United States, the world's largest market for the drug, passes through Central America. But don't think this is the only illegal activity based there. Not at all. Human trafficking of illegal immigrants and minors, is also booming in this region. And as you can imagine, all of these activities go hand in hand with organized crime. Criminal organizations that control, manage, and fight each other for dominance of all of these businesses. We're talking about a huge industry, and a highly structured one, with managers, administrators, lawyers, corporate advisors, diversification, investment strategies, and a whole lot else. An industry that is increasingly becoming involved in developing a presence in Central America. Check it out.
Mexican cartels are moving 90% of their activities to Central America, according to research.
The increasing pressure from the state in Mexico in recent years has made this type of mafia want to settle in countries with weaker and less vigilant governments. And you know what? The truth is that these groups, these macro crime companies, have managed to take over much of Central America.
Mexico, crime exporter to Central America.
Mexico, or rather the Mexican cartels, are slowly becoming the leaders, the biggest drug business owners in Latin America. Of course, they've been competing with Colombian groups for quite some time. The Mexican cartels already control the majority of the main routes for transporting illegal goods, and that pretty much means controlling all of Central America. Now, let's put ourselves in the shoes of these great bosses for a second. Imagine that you're one of them. What's the fastest way to control the Central American territory? How can you settle in and dominate this region? Exactly. A good option would be to establish alliances with the native criminal groups, those that were there before you. Groups that have the necessary infrastructure, contacts, and knowledge of the territory that you need. We're talking about groups that have a single philosophy: work with whoever gives you the most cash. This is hardly surprising. We all know the power of the dollar. But how and why did Central America become so ripe for exploitation by the Mexican drug traffickers? To understand that, we need to go back to the 1990s. You see, the key moments when the players changed happened between 1991 and 1993, when the Medellin cartel suffered its greatest defeat. Pablo Escobar's fall, as well as that of the cartel's main bosses, also meant losing the huge influence and power that they had in Central America, which they'd gained thanks to their alliances with local groups who worked directly for them. And that was the Mexican group's great window of opportunity, which, of course, they took advantage of by storming into Central America with the objective of completely controlling that important bridge which connects the production centers with the consumption center. But surely some of you might be thinking now, well, Simon, there are several different cartels in Mexico. Didn't that pose a problem? And, well, yes, indeed it did. After the Mexicans arrived, Central America became a kind of battlefield between the different Mexican cartels who fought to control the transport routes. And that's precisely one of the reasons that violence in Central America increased dramatically until finally each cartel claimed their own niche territory. You could say that Mexican cartels became major exporters of violence and crime to their southern neighbors. Check out the case of Honduras, for example. You see, the power struggles between Mexican cartels and local groups to increase their influence and gain control of the business explain much of the increased crime during those years. Now let's put all big numbers aside. Let's focus on the streets. How exactly do all these battles between cartels and Central American criminal groups affect the safety of regular citizens? Well, listen up.
When violence doesn't find an enemy.
We've already showed you that the Central American North Triangle has the highest crime rates in the world. That's why we ask an essential question. Is there a solution? What does the region need to achieve social peace? Well, the truth is that this goal seems very, very complicated. Why? Well, check this out.
Honduran president's brother is found guilty of drug trafficking. Honduran president is accused of drug conspiracy. Prosecutors say drug proceeds were allegedly used to support Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez's 2013 election. Son of ex-Honduran president gets 24 years for U.S. drug charge. Former El Salvador President Saca gets 2-year prison term for bribery.
Against such a backdrop of corruption, institutionalized drug trafficking, and other despicable actions, who would put up their hand to fight crime, especially if crime itself is in charge? If the highest spheres in power in Central America have such close ties, very close with the great criminals, how on earth is anyone going to fight them? And it's not just that they can't, they just don't want to. It's a matter of incentives. No one, absolutely no one, wants to kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. However, hold on a second, because despite this harsh reality, the truth is that in recent years, Central America has experienced a gradual reduction in homicide rates. This has led many politicians to stand up. Of course, in many cases, it wasn't thanks to the government, but rather in spite of it. Let's take a look at El Salvador. In El Salvador in 2018, they had 15% fewer homicides than in the previous year, but even so, it was still a very high number, 3,340 homicides in 1 year in a country of less than 6.5 million inhabitants. El Salvador is the country with the highest homicide rate in the most dangerous region of the planet. So we could say that it's the most dangerous country in the world. But even though the country has encouraged it, the truth is that this history of violence comes from way back, long before the Mexican cartels ever set foot in Central America. We've talked about them for a while on VisualPolitik. The Maras are a dangerous criminal gang member group based in Los Angeles that are dedicated mainly to drug and weapons trafficking, money laundering, immigrant trafficking, and prostitution. Since the 1960s, they've been one of El Salvador's greatest security challenges. The Mara Salvatrucha, or MS-13, and Barrio 18 are the two main branches, which, as expected, often fight each other and have been trying to control the Salvadoran territory for many years in order to better carry out their illegal activities. It's been this fight over the territory that has spread pain and suffering all over El Salvador. And of course, these Maras are still fully active. So why is it that crime has decreased in recent years? Well, take a look at this.
Drug traffickers use maras and street gangs to dominate Central America.
Yeah, as you can see, paradoxically, this alliance could explain much of the reduction in homicides. Why? Well, the answer's complex, but simplifying a bit, we could say that currently the maras are acting as branches of the most powerful Mexican cartels, such as the Sinaloa cartel or Los Zetas. Interestingly, this alliance could be causing part of these gangs' forces to be operating in wider fields, protecting the Mexican cartel's activities and thus moving them away from the streets. Let's just say there are bigger businesses than extorting money from the corner store. And that's not the only change. In addition, Mexican cartels have noticed that maras are tremendously effective in controlling cities and infusing the greatest possible terror. So they are recruiting troops and moving to Mexico to support their activities and to train their own people. Basically, they're enlisting them. That way, Mexicans have introduced the maras into the large-scale international drug trafficking business. But how exactly are the gangs helping the Mexican cartels? Well, obviously not for the common good. They are teaching them the most horrible, cruel, and ruthless ways of treating their adversaries. These are techniques they are moving to and implementing in Mexico itself. I think that now you can understand better why crime has decreased in recent years. And yes, unfortunately, it has little to do with governments or with the US's plan for Central America, and more to do with the dynamics of the crime industry. Surely, at this point, many of you might be thinking that, well, this is just getting a bit out of hand, right? Maras and cartels collaborating, governments bought by and backing criminal interests, ineffective and corrupt security forces, bribed courts. Against such a backdrop, do you think that El Salvador and Central America in general have any chance to escape this vicious cycle? What can Salvadorians do to stop being the most dangerous country in the world? Well, I'm sorry to say that it doesn't look like an easy task. But who knows? Perhaps the arrival of this man, who's very well known for leading his government through tweets, can make a step forward by showing that one of the problems of Central America, and perhaps the most important one, is that there's a lack of political will.
Que aquí, al 1 de junio, vamos a construir el mejor gobierno en la historia de nuestro país.
Nayib Bukele, an outsider candidate, claims victory in El Salvador election.
Bukele came to power in early 2019 with the key promise of making El Salvador a safer and less corrupt country. Will he achieve it? Well, only time will tell, but for now, it looks like he's taking decisive steps to do so. Of course, with Latin American politicians, well, no one ever knows. In this region, the forecasts, especially if they're optimistic, usually aren't worth very much.
El Salvador launches anti-corruption commission inspired by Guatemala.
And be careful, because corruption isn't a minor problem. In this region, fighting corruption is a necessary step to break the link between power and crime. Well, having reached this point, we've seen why politicians can't take the credit even if homicide rates are decreasing. We've seen that nowadays there's little room for hope in Honduras, and that El Salvador could be facing a great opportunity for real change. However, in this delicate balance of crime and power, we need to include another Central American country. A country that isn't a part of the Northern Triangle, but which has recently seen a dramatic increase in violence. In many cases, a very different violence, because drug trafficking isn't the only disease that plagues Central America. So listen up.
No quiero que se vayan del país con el cachimbo real, que se vayan a la cárcel.
Nicaragua, the end of a dream?
We've talked about this in several videos. In Nicaragua, there's a phenomenon that doesn't happen in many other Latin American countries. That is the use of violence as a form of political control. It's a scenario similar to the one found in Venezuela, and which has suddenly ended the myth that Nicaragua was the exception, the only safe country in the most dangerous region of the world. For example, in 2017, Nicaragua had only 7 homicides per 100,000 inhabitants, while at the same time, in Honduras, it was 40, 51 in El Salvador, and 28 in Guatemala. The difference is remarkable, but that doesn't really mean Nicaragua is a safe place to live. Time has certainly shown us that. The Sandinista National Liberation Front, the ruling party, has completely penetrated the state's power agencies, politicizing them by getting like-minded people into key positions and using true paramilitary groups to repress the population. Nicaraguan tyrant Daniel Ortega has literally begun employing thugs to do the dirtiest work in the name of the police and the army during the protests. And yes, from a political and institutional point of view, this is one of the worst decisions a leader can make.
Alarm raises over wave of crimes with viciousness that bear the seal of paramilitaries of Daniel Ortega in Nicaragua. In 2018, violence rates skyrocketed throughout the brutal repression of civil protesters by President Daniel Ortega's regime.
Because as soon as a government begins using irregular forces to repress the masses, they create conditions that legalize and normalize violence and give impunity at a general level. You could say the floodgates of crime opened with the first blow. We've seen it in Venezuela, and we're starting to see it in Nicaragua. Anyway, as you can see, crime, corruption, and a lack of safety are the great evils that are hanging over Central America. In many cases, if not in all cases, this is happening with the approval and complicity of the political powers. We wanted to make this video to better show you exactly what is happening in this region of the world, the most dangerous region on the planet in terms of violence. We also wanted to show you what is hiding behind the decreasing number of homicides that have been seen in recent years. But now it's your turn. Do you think that safety in Central America is an impossible dream? Can the nation really get rid of the curse of drug trafficking and organized crime? Well, please leave your answers in the comments section below, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please do hit that like button if you did, and don't forget to subscribe for brand new videos. Also, please do check out our friends at the Reconsider Media podcast. They provided the vocals in this episode that were not mine. Also, this channel is possible because of Patreon and our patrons on that platform. Please consider joining them and supporting our mission of providing independent political coverage. And as always, I'll see you next video.